Following on from what mutual funds are, in other words, pools of money that are managed by a portfolio manager typically, that are then invested in different types of classes, I just want to touch on briefly what types of different mutual funds there are. Well, really, mutual funds can be created and can invest in many different things. You can have a mutual fund where people put money in and a pool of money is created that then buys the equity of large US companies, a US equity mutual fund. You could have the same thing, a large pool of money created that then invests in UK equities, and its benchmark might be the FTSE. In the case of the US equity mutual fund, it could invest in large cap US companies and the benchmark could be the S&P 500. And the portfolio manager would be valued against that. You could have a mutual fund that invests in government bonds. You can have mutual funds that invest in certain sectors of the market. And you can have mutual funds that invest in emerging market stocks. You can have mutual funds that invest in emerging market bonds. And really in each case, there would be certain guidelines for that mutual fund as to what it invests in, and it would be also shown on the name and it would be shown in the documentation for that mutual fund. And the performance of that mutual fund, or if there is a portfolio manager, the performance of that portfolio manager can be measured against that benchmark. So if the benchmark, for example, in the case of the US equity mutual fund is the S&P 500, on a quarterly, monthly, yearly basis, the performance of that mutual fund in terms of its return in percentage terms can be measured against the performance of the index. And one can see whether that mutual fund has done better than the index or done worse than the index. In other words, if one had just bought the index using a computer or an index fund, which we'll talk about shortly, whether one would have been better off or worse off by having this portfolio management process, this active portfolio management process. And in the next section, we'll talk about active versus passive management of mutual funds.